Hello and welcome to GameTime Episode 2, which is all about the Ogre board game. We have 3 parts lined up for you today. In Part 1, we're going to take a look at what's inside of this gigantic box that is the Ogre board game, so an unboxing here. Part 2, we're going to go through an example of gameplay, and that's how the Ogres work, how the armored and infantry units work. And then in Part 3, we're going to put it all together and play a nice game on a GEV map. So before we get to those 3 parts, let's talk about what's coming up in the Game Time episodes here. So first we have our next miniatures game selected. The next miniatures game is going to be Muskets and Tomahawks, and that's a French and Indian War / American War of Independence. Both periods are covered in there. Skirmish level game in 28mm. We have some beautiful terrain and miniatures together for that, and we're going to be playing that in the next miniatures game. For board games, we have a Game of Thrones, the board game lined up, and we're pulling players together for that right now. And what's kind of interesting with that, if for you Game of Thrones fans out there, is there's some very cool gamer bling you can get. And we've been looking at kind of how we can have some gamer bling while we play it. Kind of the first interesting thing I found was there's a brewery in Copperstone, New York called the Omni Gang Brewery here. And they've been producing official Game of Thrones beer for HBO here. And so right now there's the Take the Black Stout beer that's out right now, kind of the Winterfell. It's got the old tree from Winterfell on here. So I've picked up several of these so we can have it during the Game of Thrones board game episode. So kind of neat. There's also custom beer labels you can print off for beer bottles, and I think we'll be taking advantage of that too. That's customized for each of the houses that are in Westeros. The other kind of neat thing too is I was able to get these pint glasses that have the house sigils on them. So I've got one for each of the major houses that is covered in the board game, and so everybody will be drinking out of a house appropriate pint glass for our Game of Thrones the board game episode. So that should be very neat in terms of gamer bling, and it's a great game, lots of fun to play. Certainly for one of those strategy games, you can really get through it even with a lot of players in a very reasonable amount of time. So great. Lots coming up, lots of great stuff coming up in the new year here for Game Time. Let's take a closer look what's inside this gigantic box here so you can see all the coolness that is the Ogre box game. Great, so let's take a closer look inside the box here. So I'm just going to lift this off here and make a little bit of room here for us. So as I pull off the top here, you can see there's a lot of stuff in here. So first of all is on the top here you get the reference sheets for all the ogres, and of course if you're not familiar, ogres are just the really big tanks that are used in the game. I know when I didn't know anything about the game originally, I heard the term ogre, I thought there was one big gigantic tank, and that was kind of, everybody tried to kill the one big tank. But realistically, that wasn't the case. So ogres are these big things, but what you have here is the ogre, essentially data sheets, ogre record sheets, and this is for the board game. They also give you a second one, which is for the miniatures game. So you can see the one here, it actually says at the top here, Ogre Miniatures record sheet, which is a little bit different. So essentially the same armaments. The difference is like the move here is in hexes on these. These are in inches, how far the ogres move if you're playing the miniatures game. And so all the ogres are covered on here, so that's great. You get 2 quick reference sheets and double-sided here. And so on one side there's your turn overview for ramming and such, and the sizes and what kind of damage happens when that happens. You have the size table, all of your combat results here with some notes at the bottom. And then everything over here, if you're playing on the GEV maps particularly, you'll have all of these different kind of terrain items covered here, and of course their effect on the various units that are involved in the game, and you can just cross-reference the table. So very, very handy quick reference sheet here that you can essentially use to play the game completely. Very little referencing to the rules once you kind of take the first read through. Everything can kind of be driven off of these 2 quick reference sheets. You get your designer's edition, essentially your rule book here, and so flipping through, it's really beautifully done, really well laid out. Lots of pictures and examples of the units. So really easy read here. I'd say the basic rules are very straightforward. There's lots of advanced rules you can add in to make the game kind of take it to the next level. If you've played the basic rules 20 times and you're looking to add a little bit more spice to your Ogre games. So that's the rule book here. You've got a scenario book, which is just chock full of scenarios. Like this page alone has several scenarios on it. And it just keeps going and going. And what's cool here is that all the scenarios have an option to make them a non-ogre scenario, so not using the big tanks. You could just use infantry and regular tanks to fight it out. Or in each scenario it has an ogre scenario if you want to add an ogre to one side or both sides, how that changes how the forces are laid out. but all the victory conditions, all of the scenarios are pretty different from one another, and so you get trains and a whole bunch of neat stuff. So a really great scenario book. It also gives you kind of the victory points conditions on the back. So for destroyed ogres, what are the victory points for regular tanks and infantry? So whenever you're trying to figure out who won a game just in a straight up fight, or even in any of the scenarios, you can kind of use this point system to determine who won. So scenario book right there. Now this is not something that comes with the games, but those Ogre record sheets that you saw earlier, I actually took them to a color printer and I did a 200% blow up for each of those, and then I laminated them so I can just use dry erase markers to mark them off, because you'll go through a lot of these if you start playing the game. Especially, we don't want to waste a lot of paper, so now that I've got these laminated and I can just use dry erase markers, I'm all good. The other thing is they're a lot bigger. The Ogre record sheet, if I grab one here really quick, you'll see the size difference right here is even just, right there. I mean, great, but if you have people that are, normally you're just going to be playing with a couple of different ogres, so if you just have two of these versus trying to look at the whole sheet here, that's why I like this system a little bit better. So again, it doesn't come with the game, you'd have to make these yourself, but all you got to do is take this to a color printer or copier and copy it at 200%. For each one that you want to do, and then just laminate it at your local Kinko's or whatever you want to do, and you can have these same kind of cards. So very handy. The next thing, once you get through kind of the paper layer there at the top, is you have the Ogre Garage, and so there's two pieces of Ogre Garage here, and there's a lot of different ogres. So what's great here is in the bottom of the trays, it's all labeled as to what's inside of here. So for example, if I pull this out here, this says reactor inside of here, and these are the two reactors. It even has a little diagram so you know where everything goes. So that's really great. Of course, depending on whether you have the Designer's Edition or the Kickstarter Edition, this is slightly different. I'd say there's really three things you want to know if you're looking to collect Ogre. The Designer's Edition obviously comes with almost everything. If you were part of the Kickstarter, or if you go on eBay, you can still get the Kickstarter items. The big difference there is you're going to get these Vulcans, the little ogres with the arms here. These are Kickstarter exclusive, so you need the Kickstarter exclusive sheets to get these two items here, the Ogre Vulcans. The reactors, there's 2D counters for these in the game, but these are the 3D counters. Those are also part of the Kickstarter. There's some more terrain tiles that are part of the Kickstarter, and then just a couple of other things, like there's a second one of the Doppel Soldeners. There's a couple other the different ogres here. Primarily the green ones come as part of the Kickstarter too, for the Mark 6 and the Mark 5s and such. Additional command posts, so these are command posts inside of here. So you get different colors. A lot of those through the main Designer's Edition come along with it. I actually think if you get the Kickstarter sheets, if you really like Ogre and you weren't part of the Kickstarter, picking up those sheets, even though they're mighty pricey on eBay right now, it certainly really fills out the game. I'd say for anybody, even if you were part of the Kickstarter, what you need to know is that if you go to Steve Jackson Games Ogre website, there were a number of counter sheets that were funded by different companies. So, for example, Boardgame Geek, they funded a counter sheet, and so there's their little CP. It says Boardgame Geek on it. That's kind of neat. And if you get those, then you can get a bunch of different stuff that even people in the Kickstarter won't have. So, for example, this little kind of Godzilla-looking guy, this little custom Mark 6 here, these are all from the Boardgame Geek counter sets, and so something really unique there. The other thing that's really neat that comes in those sets is this little radio communications tower that's 3D cut out. And so even my good buddy that had the Kickstarter edition saw this and went, oh, that's kind of neat. I didn't get that as part of the Kickstarter. Well, there are a limited number of those counter sheets available, but you can order them straight off that website, or it gives you the link to where to order them. So several different counter sheets, additional factions like mercenaries that you can buy. So some great stuff there. So lots of different ogres in here. I don't think we need to go through all of them, but you have essentially your standard Mark III here. There's a bunch of different Mark IIIs included for both the Combine and for the Pan-European Federation here. And so Mark IIIs, you get these, which are your fencers. So lots of different fencers here. This is two of these big guys. These are kind of the big guys here, the Doppel Soldeners. I can't pronounce it properly because I'm half retarded apparently. But you get two of these. You have your I believe these are Mark 6s. Yes, those are Mark 6s. Unless I have a couple pencils in here, that was because I was using the paper sheets before I got those laminated. You get two Mark 2s inside of this one here. So little Mark 2s for the Combine. A buttload of laser towers in a bunch of different colors. So laser towers, big laser towers. And then there's also small laser towers, which are over here. So a little bit smaller laser towers, again, a whole bunch of those. So laser towers, you get your strong points inside of here for the various different factions, again, in different colors that are on the front face here for blue and red and green. Over here, these are the Vulcans, the Ogre Vulcans, which are also pretty big guys in the game. But again, part of the Kickstarter exclusive sheets. Moving on over here, I have some extra terrain tiles in here. More of kind of the same here. So these are Ogre Mark 5s for the different factions, all in this section here. So Ogre Mark 5. Over here, these are another Mark 6, I believe, if I look. So Ogre Mark 4, sorry, I take that back. So Ogre Mark 4s inside of here, two, one for green, one for red here. You have your command posts. This is a different style of command posts. So there's really command posts over here, and command posts over here is really kind of the Combine command posts and the Pan-European command posts over here. So two different kinds of command posts. You get administrative buildings over here. So these are the little admin buildings, and of course in all the different colors inside of here. Lots more Mark 3s over here, Mark 3s. These are Mark 3Bs for the Combine, these two up here. And mobile command posts up here. So you get two blue and one red up here for mobile command posts, which is great. So that kind of covers this side, that covers all this side. So that's the Ogre Garage. So tons and tons of 3D counters on here, especially if you fill it out with all the extra counter sheets. So let's pull this out and just put it off to the side. What's great about this is everything just fits right in, stacks right on top of each other, no problems. If you have any edition of the game, you'll have the basic Ogre map, which is this orange map. It actually stores unfolded right on top here. So there's two pieces of this, and it stores just unfolded right inside of here, which apparently a lot of people don't know that. And so this is great, that fits right in there. The basic Ogre map is really just, it's really great for learning the rules, because it's essentially craters with some ridge lines and open terrain. And so if you're just trying to learn the rules, it's very, very simple terrain-wise, and you can focus on kind of the core mechanics of the rule system, as you'll see. As we further kind of delve in, there's a bunch of different terrain tiles here. So these are overlays. So if you didn't like what was on here, for example, you could put overlays on top of these. So these are all different ones. They're all double-sided, and they've got a bunch of different kinds of terrain represented, from cities to destroyed cities and water, you name it. So that's all stuff that's inside of here. And then individual terrain tiles are all over here. So tons of individual terrain tiles if you just wanted to put that over there, for example. And some additional kind of 3. So there's all types of different terrain tiles in the middle here. And what you see here is 4 sections of what are referred to generally as GEV maps, or ground effect vehicles, are kind of the special type of vehicle that are in this game. But originally these were released as part of the GEV system, I believe, with the game. And so that's how people refer to them, as the GEV maps. What's great here is these are 4 different maps that can interlock together, but each map individually comes with 2 sections. So for example, this is map S1 North, and there's a map S1 South. And so you can see map S1 North, S1 South. All the hexes have numbers inside of them. But if you were to unfold these, you can see that there's lots of different terrain here, and that this is one section, and then this one, if it unfolded, would go right in beside it, and it all fits together. I won't do it here just because it takes so much room. But you get 4 of these different maps that are very different, with water, terrain, and all that stuff. And again, combined with all the overlays that are included in the box, gives you an endless supply of possibilities for gaming. And again, there's 4 of these maps, and I believe you can link those maps together and make a humongous game if you wanted to. But it's really fun. You'll see one of these in closer detail in part 3 when we play the actual game, since we're going to use one of the GEV maps. As you kind of peel that layer away, you get even further into the box here, and there's all sorts of stuff. So there's a lot of counters to represent the different tanks and stuff, and generally they're in 3 sizes. So you can have the smaller size here, which actually that's not down there. The smaller size is over here. So here's, for example, a missile tank for the Combine. So they all kind of get stuck in over here, and you've got different factions. I've got Black Rose mercenaries in here, I've got Combine, I've got Pan-European, so there's different factions over here. So you kind of get small counters, you get slightly larger counters, or kind of normal size counters, which are like, these are engineers or infantry. They all kind of can fit into this slot here. And then you get the larger counters, which are over here, which is like the super heavy tanks, the howitzers, all fit over here. So there's different sections for the different size counters inside of here. And of course, you can get all your factions together and keep them nice and organized. The other kind of counters you get here, you get these kind of missile carriers, or crawlers, to correct myself there. So missile crawlers, both with the missile on it and without the missile. And there's actually, even in the little kind of miscellaneous tray here, there's little missiles that can be used to track these when they get fired across the map, because there are cruise missiles that come in and fly over the map. And so there's lots of different ones over here. So there's a section over here for storing those. You get some different ones if you have like moves. So for example, command posts generally don't have their defense 0 and they don't move, so very easy to kill. In some scenarios they actually do have a defense value, but it's not listed on the marker like it normally is for tanks and armored vehicles. And so you can get these little arrows here to help you remember what the move and defense values are for those particular items. For the Vulcans, again, if you have the Kickstarter edition, the Vulcan Ogre, which had the little arms, the flailing arms, it has Vulcan drones, and so all the counters for those Vulcan drones are over here. There's different kinds of howitzers, so this is a slightly different configuration of a howitzer than the ones that are tracked over here, but again, a special place to put those. There's additional overlays for railroad tracks that are crossing bridges, and destroyed and not destroyed, which is really cool. Same for bridges, so not destroyed bridge, destroyed bridge, and then different turns. So on one side this is a road, on the other side it's a railroad track, so if you want to put down custom kind of configurations there. You get these longer kind of roads and railroad tracks that can be stored over here. There are ogres that are represented, so like the Ogre Mark 1, for example, over here. There's a lot of counters not a 3D counter, just as 2D counters. Like for example, the Vulcan. This is a Vulcan, which normally is a 3D counter, but in this particular case, the guy who funded it as a 2D counter. And so there's lots of extra ogres over here for kind of split factions, or for the factions that are using Mark 1s. You have other overlays for ridge lines or borders. Over here, so here's like some ridge lines, for example. So again, if you want to expand even the basic Ogre map, like this one's the orange of the basic Ogre map, you can expand the basic maps. There's some smaller tile overlays in here, so tons of these, 2 size, so you get kind of the different sizes laid out in different areas for terrain overlays. And then of course your dice. Lots of positions to store the dice for the different faction dice. And then miscellaneous trays have all sorts of different stuff in here, like little objective things, like you can flip over, whether it's a dummy or not. So if you're doing some sort of hidden movement or something like that, or if you had victory points and you didn't know what they were and you wanted them to kind of be hidden, you could do that. So just a ton of stuff that's inside the box here, and I could pull these all out, but essentially you have lots and lots of different units for all the different factions that all store nice and handily in here. And of course, when you're all done and you want to pack it up, you just take your GEV maps, when you put all your counters away, throw them all in here, and get the Ogre garage in on top of that. And despite how much stuff is actually inside of this box, it all goes away. Here's that original kind of the basic Ogre map here. Again, the key thing about this is it stores unfolded. So there's these little ridge lines here. It even says Ogre map. So again, much like the Ogre garage, there's labels to help you kind of figure out where everything goes. So great, this stores out flat. You get your Ogre garage put back in. And despite everything that's chalked into this particular box, it all still goes flat if you kind of put everything away properly. Then the box top should go right back on, nice and flat when you go grab it here. And there's so much air in the box that when you put it on, you'll kind of have to let it settle down a bit, and you can just feel the air letting out of that friggin' box there. But oh my, it's big. And that's it. That's what's inside of the box. So let's go right to figuring out how to play this game and showing you a gameplay walkthrough.